Hey, it's Chris. We've got 5 massive games coming to crowdfunding this week. I mean that in the most metaphorical, but also literal sense, because big boxes, as well as big names that you're going to recognize doing things again. That's kind of the theme. It's a little bit of a retread week. How do you feel about second or third editions? That's where we're going with this. But some big names, and I think this is going to be a really interesting test of the market because, again, how do you feel about second or third editions? How do you feel about remakes? That's what we're diving into. Let's go. First up is going to be a very interesting test of the market. Cyclades, the Ultimate Legendary Edition, essentially. And so it's a bidding auction style game where you are trying to do area control with Greek gods and goddesses and troops. And how you manage it over those rounds determines, with their asymmetric powers, what you can do. And the new edition here is going to be a very interesting test of the market because they've already said that this is not just going to be a straight remake with all of the expansions in a big box. This is going to be different. It's going to take and get rid of some of the previous modules or things that the expansions added. And it's also going to give you a few new things, replacing some of the gods with heroes or troops that are going to give you different ways of interacting. They say, from the designer himself, Bruno Cathala, the new edition is going to be more dynamic. It's going to be different in terms of how you're going to be having to control or construct 3 buildings, as well as going to be adding a new god Hera and replacing Hades and Kronos, which you may be more familiar with the previous edition. As I previously mentioned, more heroes. Their abilities and effects have been reworked though. They're going to allow you to do different things than previously. You're also going to get some differences in the creatures and the preservation of the team mode if you were a fan of that. 2x2 or 3 teams of 2 for up to 6 players. No solo mode though included as of yet. Now they make it very clear that there will be an updated 2-player version as well, because oftentimes these auction bidding style games do not scale well to that player count. They also say over on the website that there is going to be a retail version, but you know, how much is unlocked? What's the price point going to be? It's going to have the same gameplay elements, so it's going to be a little bit similar in the sense of what Kemet did when it relaunched. Exact details, exact pricing, who knows? Launching on the 29th from Open Sesame Games. That's number 1. Now the 3.0 edition, or the 3rd edition, the 3rd time around, for Arena of the Contest is also launching this upcoming week on the 27th. This is from Dragori Games. Tanares Adventures was the 2nd version of this with dragons, right? Big miniature dragons that you could even buy pre-painted. This did one of the more recent revisions of a PvP, PvE, as well as a skirmish style one-off style of games. By all accounts, it's really well thought of in all of those aspects, which is making it one of the more rare or unique ones. Now, obviously, you're going to have your preference, and it still uses more of a D20 mechanism, but it takes some slight nuance there. One of the other big differences than the other games in this genre, at least when it came out a couple years ago, and the newest edition, which has just gotten released and delivered to backers within the last couple months, is that it does a lot more difference in the quests, in the objectives of the scenarios themselves. And so there was a lot of uniqueness in terms of how the scenarios were constructed, more than just smash, smash, bang, bang, you know, knock them out style of things. Traps, terrain, all of these other things that were really, you know, innovative a couple years ago. And so the big difference, it sounds like right now, is this is going to be more of a big box storage solution as well. And I'm assuming there is going to be a little bit of new content in addition to the storage system. New attack cards is just what's mentioned in the Board Game Geek forums. But again, the new expansion, the Tanares Adventures, has an 8.9 on Board Game Geek. And so that's really freaking pretty good. Now, it only, again, has 264 ratings, but that's okay because it's considered like an expansion add-on. And even the base game itself has an 8.6 rating with nearly 1,000. So, yeah. Is it significantly different, though, than the other ones that do similar aspects in your collection? Is it unique enough? Are the characters unique enough? Because those are going to be the questions you have to ask yourself if you're looking at one over the other. And the dragons as bosses, playing as some of the dragons, I think Aisha on your team in a cooperative sense, you can do that. I think you have a mode where, you know, you versus the dragons on each side. So, I mean, that was the big key with Tanares Adventures, and we'll see. I mean, right? Like, what else is in store? What is the bundling? What is the price point? Is it going to be that much more of a savings if you're now coming in now? Or is it going to be a better savings if you had gotten it sooner, right? That's always the dichotomy with these second or third editions. What happens there? So that's launching on the 27th. And that's actually a 1 to 8 player game, while Cyclades is 2 to 6. So that's going to be another interesting test. Do you go for those higher player counts or not in these situations? And the third one up here is another interesting, different altogether test of the market, because what we have essentially going on here is a coming back to crowdfunding from Adam's Apple Games with Planet Unknown, right? The spacefaring, tile-laying, lazy Susan using game. They did a deluxe version, they did a regular version, they upgraded the tray, they upgraded a few of the other aspects. I think there was a little bit of content, maybe like another player board or something. I don't actually remember. It totally went by me the first time it went on crowdfunding. And then people got it and they said, whoa, this is really good. And people really liked it. And there's some asymmetry on the planet side where you flip it over and you're moving your little moon landings across, trying to take care of craters or meteors as they fall, but trying to match up the symbols. And you know, it's cool. It's cool. It's gotten a lot of accolades. I'm not sure, I don't remember if there was any gameplay content difference between the deluxe and the regular. If there was, it was very little, I think, overall. But it's gone bonkers in the secondary market. It hasn't gone wide retail, and so availability has been sparse at best, or even in between print runs, something along those lines. And so even like the retail version right now, recently on the secondary market, has been selling for like $90 to $100. And that was, I believe, even about the price or even slightly more than the price of the deluxe edition during the Kickstarter. Now, this is coming back not only as a reprint, but it's also coming back with an expansion. The expansion is actually titled Supermoon. Deluxe edition reprint over on GameFound. The problem is, even though there's 5,000 people following over on GameFound right now, there is literally no information on the preview page. So even going over there and me throwing the link down below isn't going to help you learn anything more at this point. So we'll kind of see what they have. I mean, this is a game where I worry about more complexity, right? Where, you know, it doesn't need a lot more complexity. It needs a touch here or there with something here and something there. It needs a touch here or there in terms of just a little extra, but I do not want like a ton more that also makes the game a lot longer and drag on, because that's what I fear in an expansion like this. But 5,000 people following, which again doesn't sound like a lot, which actually is probably a lot, but given all its acclaim, I would have actually expected more. I'm a fan of it. It didn't make my top 10 of last year just because last year was actually a really good year. This was just outside the top 10. It reminds me I never did that video, but that was really interesting because I could also see it rising up because it's also not gone anywhere in my collection as well. So we'll kind of see what they have in store for us. What is the price point? How much does, as we talked about last week, the price point for Gloomhaven / Frosthaven increase the second time around? How much do they do this with the deluxe? Or is it more like Townsfolk Tussle, where there really wasn't a significantly larger increase? A slight one, but not massive. That's going to be probably the make it or break it on total funding. But again, people wanted the deluxe edition for some reason, really a lot. And so don't be surprised if during this campaign you see people selling their own copies of like retail, trying to get the payment or the money to buy their own deluxe version during this campaign too. So we've seen that several times before. Wouldn't be surprised if we see it more now. Next one up, again, very interesting test of the market here. DC deck building. Cryptozoic is coming back to crowdfunding. They're doing it for a second time with their Justice League. This one, though, is Justice League Dark. You know, this is the team that gets their hands dirty, the team that does the stuff that doesn't report it. It's the X-Men X-Force equivalent, if you will. It's got a cool array of heroes if you've known anything about the comic lore. Constantine being one of the favorites there, always, I think Swamp Thing, along those lines, right? Not your A-listers, your Bs and Cs, but doing interesting things with them. And as we saw previously with Cryptozoic on the previous crowdfunding one, then they did this, they offered actually surprisingly good deals. They offered a lot of the other pre-existing expansions without boxes at a cheaper price than you can get at retail, even including the shipping. I was really impressed by that because it was really surprising last time. But they offered like a combination of 3 products. They offered like the main expansion, they offered a 1 versus 1 separate like flash one, I think, and then something else that I'm completely blanking on. But if you wanted to get all the promos, you kind of had to get it all. And I think they're doing something very similar this time around. How much of a promo junkie are you? Is it, you know, something akin to the other Marvel DC sides of things where this is your bread and butter, right? Like, and I have a weakness for some of the X-Men stuff. So, you know, Multiverse and Marvel United were a weakness for me at some of those areas. Is dark one of those for you? What are they actually going to do? How digging deep are they going to go into the comic book lore? That's maybe going to be the most enticing point. You know, there's going to be tons of stretch goals. A lot of the promo stuff, the stretch goals were exclusive last time, I believe, for Kickstarter. So we're going to see not a whole lot of hype. Again, no knowledge, only about 3,300 people following on the Kickstarter preview page at the time of me filming this. So, I mean, I think they raised over $1 million the first one. Which, again, DC deck building is not one of those that people go, oh yeah, that's one that really has stood the test of time, although it has gotten better with the expansions, just like Legendary. It's thought of as sort of, you know, Legendary 1, DC deck building 2. And it's just always intriguing to see what you can do with some of these new concepts. And the other fact of the matter is, if you're already previously in, sometimes it makes some of the older stuff just not as fun because it's just not as integrated, not as well thought out. I mean, you can see the evolution of the game, essentially, is what I'm saying, with some of these newer expansions and making it not only more complex, but sometimes even swinging the, you know, pendulum all the way to the other side, Anne's end, and kind of over creeping as well from a power, complexity, whatever else side of things. And so that's going to be another great test to see kind of where the support is for that game nowadays as well. The last one up of the 5th is a Redux, literally Redux. This is Shipwrights of the North Sea. And this is a Garphill game, and it's Redux. It's literally titled the same thing as the original, only it says Redux in it. Again, I think this is kind of strange from my standpoint. I know there's reasoning behind this, but the Board Game Geek description literally says it's an entirely new game, quote unquote. Then why title it the same thing, right? Like, that's where I have a cognitive dissonance, where it doesn't make sense in my head, essentially, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, if it's a completely different game, why use the same title? Okay, I don't understand. But clearly, they wanted to use the thematic incorporation and the player goals from the original, they say. But the core gameplay is rebuilt to create a much more in line with what their more recent games and iterations of mechanics have been trying to get out there. And so basically they just want to remake it. And so the question is, do you need the new version? Do you want the new version? Is it going to be that much interesting? Now, I know Jared over at 3 Minute Board Games, he told me that they're going to be testing that one, I think. And so he should have a video on that one. So if you like his channel, definitely give that a look-see when it launches. And I believe it's launching on the 27th, like all of these except for the first one, Cyclades, which I think is the 29th. And so that's going to be sort of the question, right? Like, what is the price point? I'm imagining that there's already a promo pack listed in Board Game Geek as well. So that's going to be the incentive with some metal coins, as we've seen with recently all of the Garphill releases. And so kind of, how do you feel about that? A Redux version. Did it need a Redux version? When is the original one from? The original one's from 2014. Okay, that's longer ago than I thought. I give credit where credit is due then. That's a decade. I'm okay with that. This is probably one of their lowest rated ones on Board Game Geek now that they look it up with a 6.4. So yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that. If you go, you know what? Just as I was speaking about DC deck building, right? The evolution of that, the evolution of Garphill games. So I guess the only question I would really say is, why not just change the title altogether? Why not just change the title altogether? Just go somewhere else. I know that's probably, you know, unpopular, but makes sense in my head at least. And you know how crazy my head is as a whole. So those are the 5 big ones that should be on your radar. And all of those, again, very different test of the market, but all of them going to be testing it in slightly, you know, unique ways as well. So what do we got for updates now? I deferred it from yesterday's video into today's video because yesterday's went too long anyway. So let's go over the updates and let's talk about the previous campaigns, big names that you should know, and big things going on with them since they launched. Stalker, the board game, $2 million, impressive. Awaken Realms, great. 41,000 people following this, 10,000 people backing this right now. Base pledge, best value. You're getting a ton of content. You're getting a bunch of stretch goals. There's going to be a bunch of stuff added. This is not your typical dungeon crawler, though. This is going to be a lot more nuanced, a lot more tactical, a lot more strategic, a lot slower, a lot more of a grind, a lot more based on the actual video game that is not just a go out, shoot everything Doom style game, right? Is that what you're looking for with this? That's the bigger concern when it comes to this. Again, all the extra stuff, variety packs, extra missions, extra miniatures. You're going to see more of it by the end. They're doing daily goals. They're doing unlocks. They're doing stretch goals for monetary. It's going to be there. So the question just is, what else is going to come before the end of the campaign? Because we haven't seen a whole lot of more new add-ons yet. I'm imagining that there will be. And so that's going to also potentially raise the funding up when it reaches that point as well, because we've already got 2 weeks left at the time of me filming this almost. So that's a lot of time left to have a few other things up your sleeve, because the other thing that you see is you don't see an all-in pledge level there, right? That's how you know more is coming. Speaking of killing it though, I mean, holy cow. I told you I didn't know what the consensus or the demand for this was, and apparently Firefly's demand on crowdfunding and board game scene is just as ravenous as the TV side of things, because it's not lagging too far behind Stalker. Holy forking cow, Batman, right? $1.5 million at 6,400 people though. That's a little bit less, so a higher pledge level average there as well, which maybe just means that you have less people going for all of the extra miniatures here, which again, I always give Awakened Realms kudos for doing and splitting it out, and this is no different in that sense. But again, you're getting a little bit more of everything content wise, and the other issue with this one is it's going to be a year out, which is fine, it's not too bad, and they're giving you just more stuff. Captain's pack, solo mode, pack. So more content. And this is a FOMO thing. They're not making this at any point, again, they said. And if you want it and you want to get everything, including all the promos and all the auto print stuff, which is ironically funny, I've seen about 3 or 4 of these come up in the secondary market since about a week prior to the campaign, even to the time of me filming this, of people trying to probably sell theirs while the value is still as high as possible. And potentially probably trying to buy this because they're saying like base game plus 2 expansions for $150. And you can get the anniversary edition here for $220. So, you know, that's a really good upgrade for $70 essentially, right? I haven't seen many buyers though on the secondary market, which is the other interesting aspect. People are going to be more prone to get this. But if you're selling, you've got to sell in between after this closes before the late pledge. That's when you sell, right? But that's a risk, because if you buy without being able to sell later, you know what I'm saying. So anyway, that's what we've got going on with the update here. Crossbows and Catapults, again, $600,000. I have no clue where this one's going to end up. It's already doing better than I would have thought, but nostalgia, this one hits home. You know, you can't really screw this one up, right? They look like they've got some solid prototypes here of how these things are actually firing. I'm relatively impressed. The gameplay is relatively simple. I don't have the setup for it. I don't have the space on, you know, the carpet's just not going to work. My kids are going to be all in this, and this is going to be more setup and tear down for me than it is going to be fun in that sense. So have we hit any other stretch goals or any other add-ons right now? No, just some of the bonus loot right here and right here. So we're going to see what else they've got in store for us. Again, it's going to be worth your value. I don't worry about that with restoration. Well, asterisks. I used to have more concerns about that with the Firewall Island. Still, the content you got was worth it from a money standpoint. Whether or not the game was what you wanted, that's a whole nother issue. So I need to go open up my Maximum Chrome copy and get that played of Mad Max. You know what I'm saying. It's not Mad Max, but it's the closest thing, Thunder Road Vendetta. So we're going to see where this one goes before the end and what it looks like at retail as well. That'll be the better or more interesting test. I guess I was the only one that had concerns about this whole put your money into a pledge manager and collect it later sort of thing, because Thiefdom's got $100,000. And that's great. I think the art looks fantastic. I think the game looks fantastic, but I'm not going to pay for this 1.5 to 2 years in advance when you're going to have 2 other campaigns I can potentially get on and have more information at a later standpoint. As much as I want to support indie from that side of things, I'm also not in the process of giving out free loans for this much of an unknown. Slight asterisk, right? Obviously, it's, you know, pick and choose as you will, but this one makes me a little bit more uncomfortable. Just waiting until they all get shipped, and if I can pledge on the very last one and get in at the same time, I'm looking at that. This is a game I think I would like actually in my collection, but I'm gonna wait and see. And so yeah, $100,000 is still really good for this, and I think they should be very happy with it from that standpoint. Invention, Evolution of Ideas. Now this is the most dichotomous or the most controversial one on the list. Really, Chris? No. Just kidding. It's not really that controversial. It's really interesting to watch the fanboys get split on Reddit as well as Board Game Geek, because you have people, depending on who starts the conversation where, it's always one side or the other, and it's very black and white. One side, you have people going, this price point is ridiculous. This is just way too much. It's creeping up. Deluxeifications, these Euro games, you know, it's just not worth it. It's just price creep, like I mentioned. On the other side, you have people going, well, you're paying for the Lacerda game. You're paying for the Lacerda guarantee. You're paying for him to be able to do this more full time. And I love all of the Lacerdas, and it's worth it because I'm supporting an indie publisher. And are both people right? Yeah, both people are right. And that's what always gets me, right? Because it just depending on what day of the week and whether or not the day of the week ends in a Y, who's on what side and how the crowd swell goes of, you know, positives and negatives. And it just amuses me to no end. Is this for me? No. I mean, I love the idea of this, but playing a 3 to 4 hour game of this also terrifies me, and it's the reason I'll never get it as much as it appeals to me at the same time. I've backed out of a trade or two for like On Mars and Weather Machine because I said, what are you doing, Chris? No. Horrible idea, Chris. That's never going to get played. So I talked myself out of it once or twice, and I'm always intrigued by it. I always think it's an interesting test of the market. But, I mean, people talk about, like, the Gloomhavens and that side of things price creeping with the Amerithrash style of game. Euros are doing it just as much, folks. Euros are doing it just as much, if not more. As I've always said, the deluxeifications on the Euro side with these upgraded components and quality components are the exact same as miniatures. They're totally unnecessary on both aspects. How you choose to spend your money is up to you, but don't think you're better because you're doing one and the other people are doing the other, right? That's what we got to get away from. Now, could we do with less of both? Yes! That's a whole nother topic on another video, though. So that's it. That's what we got going on this past week in terms of updates of the previous campaigns, what we've got looking on the horizon, and then we're really into July. Crazy. That's freaking crazy. So in the next week, I will also have my tops of the first half of 2023. Tops of first half of 2023. So my best crowdfundings, my best games I've played, a little bit of everything in between there. So try not to wait until like April of the following year of 2024 to let you know my 2023 picks, right? Trying to be a little bit more timely on that. I couldn't get added to the Board Game Geek page, that other geek list that was keeping track of them because it was too late. You know, so that's just me. I'm sorry. And speaking of that, earlier in the video, right, like I never did my 11 through 20, the ones that were just short. Because, again, there were a lot of good games from last year, and there were definitely some in the 11 through 20 that could easily moving up in the top 10. There are definitely some games in there that were going to stay in my collection regardless as well. Planet Unknown being one of them. So I don't have a whole lot else going on this weekend. A little bit of dinners with one of the other couples from the school. And then also we're going out with some other couples and kids to, you know, joint group activity. So we're doing some of that stuff. Otherwise, I just have to pick whatever is on family movie night because we discovered that my 7 and 9-year-old, they just cannot agree on a family movie night any night. And then one of them picks it and then the other one throws a fit. And then I've just decided, and we always go through this every Saturday night, like, hey, what do you want to watch? How about this? How about this? No, 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 yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, no, yes, no, yes. And so finally, I've just decided I just need to pick every night because that's what it comes down to every Saturday night when we do the movie. So I've just basically vetoed them now. And I just say we're watching this because inevitably almost whatever I pick, they end up liking because I know what they like. They don't know what they like. That's really the truth of the matter. Most of the time. Most of the time. That's all I got. So, yeah. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. I sold some stuff. Got a little bit of room cleared up here. Got to sell some more stuff. So, got to just make a bunch of space. I'm trying to get this place organized. Maybe I can start actually using it and actually having a decent light setup. I still don't have the light set up good. You know, everybody has their like neon lights behind this and I'd love to do that. And I'd want to get an overhead. And, you know, I don't have enough space. This thing's like a triangle in here, right? Like I'm at the base of the triangle and it like just goes narrow behind the camera and pointed like that. So it's really difficult from a lighting standpoint. I've asked a couple people, but like no one's had great suggestions about making it any better and higher quality filming and stuff like that. So if anyone knows anybody, have them text me or email me or something. I don't know, whatever. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. See you guys around.